Thank you, David. Sid. Who else? Okay. Penny. Arnie. Okay. Okay, David's here. That's good because he needs to help me because I always get lost on this. Okay. Oops. That I don't need. Sharing. Okay. So you guys should now get. You get the slide, the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. We've got some things that we need to go over because there's going to be some changes that start next month. We're going to talk a little bit about the negative space and talk about clear-cut rules and whether there are clear-cut rules and maybe how that affected you. But first, I want to talk a little bit about some timing that's going to change in a few days for the Teton Photography Club and the Peer Mentor Program. So here is our calendar. And I'll send things out to you, but I want you to make sure everybody understands this because I can see 3 weeks from now, all of a sudden, people are asking me all kinds of questions. Because of something that happened at Offering, and I'll have David chime in a little bit, from the library in Jackson, we're moving our meetings from Wednesdays, all of them on Wednesdays, now to all of them on Tuesdays. So the next time we have a peer mentor program, instead of it being on the 4th Wednesday, it's going to be on the 4th Tuesday. So there it is, September 20th, and that'll be in the 4th Tuesday. And here's a little more information. Wait a second, here you go. That from now on, with one exception.
Randy, I have to correct you. September 20th is not the 4th Tuesday.
What?
It's the 3rd.
It's the 3rd Tuesday. We're having the regular meeting. The regular TPC meeting is on September 20th.
Oh, okay. Oh, so I got to change that. So, thank you, David. Make sure to make it to change. Fourth Tuesday. Okay, so the 3rd Tuesday is the TPC in the library. I'm going to give David a chance to talk a little bit about that. The 4th Tuesday will be a Zoom. David, why don't you tell us what's happening in the library, what we're going to have, what we can do to make sure that that's successful, that kind of thing.
Well, I guess we were fortunate enough to get accepted by the library to have a date. And we didn't have any options. They gave us the 3rd Tuesday. So we're going to be doing all of our regular meetings in person and via Zoom on the 3rd Tuesdays of the month. So yeah, next month, I would encourage, if you're local, please come to the library. It's the Ordway Hall, which is the main, I guess, auditorium at the library. I don't think there's another one, but anyhow, you come in the side door. And also we'll be moving all the times to 6:30. They really want us to start at 6. I think we've discovered it's a little early for our crowd. But
David, I don't think the side door is open for these meetings. I think we have to come in through the main library door. We can go exit out that side door. But that's the way it is for all the other Tuesday meetings.
I went to a couple of meetings recently and we went in the side door.
Oh,
But I
okay.
tell you what, it's a good
Great.
question. I'll find out for sure. And we'll be putting out in the newsletter a lot of
Well,
information about this.
I'll bet John Hebberger knows the answer to that question. John, do you know?
If those doors are locked unless you have, unless somebody props it open, or if you have one of the buttons that'll open that quote unquote handicap door in the back. And most of us, given the age we are, can get that button. I've got one.
Oh, that's interesting because I attended 2 meetings there to see how they did things. And both the geologist and the birding, I went in that side door, it was unlocked.
From the parking lot?
Yeah, from the parking lot. Yeah, I'll find out for sure. And even if we have to come in the main, we definitely have to exit that back door because they'll lock the rest of the library.
At 7.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we'll be there after the library is closed for everybody else.
Absolutely.
Officially.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So John, you on a board or something, you know what's going on there?
I've been involved for quite a while.
Oh, good.
One way or
Okay,
another.
well, that's good. David, can you tell us a little bit about what's going to happen at that on that 4th Tuesday in September for the third Tuesday in September with the Teton Photography Club in the library?
Well, it's going to be one of our regular meetings. We are scheduled to have a speaker named Jennifer King, who specializes in black and white, but she's going to speak on composition. We're also going to do some advertising in the paper to try to get as many people there because it's our first meeting. We don't want to show up in September and have 5 people. So, but yeah, I mean, that'll be the topic for the September meeting. Now, I'll put one caveat on that. She has a very tight flight schedule. There's a chance that she may miss the meeting, and we'll have some alternate things to talk about if for some reason she doesn't show up. She's actually flying in from overseas, and like I said, it's a tight schedule. If something happens and she gets 6 or 8 hours behind, we may not actually see her. But she should be an interesting speaker. She's got like I said, it would be on composition, which we've had a lot of people ask about. So
sure.
Yeah.
Because it reaches out to people that are wildlife, landscape, portrait, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. But I think the big change is we'll be on the 3rd Tuesdays at the library plus Zoom, and we're going to be starting at 6:30. So we had to compromise with the library. They wanted 6, and that was a little early for us. We haven't had much success at starting things at 6. So,
David, do you think we should do at all meetings at 6:30? So should make the Zoom meeting on the 4th Tuesday at 6:30?
you mean your peer mentor meeting?
Yeah.
Well, that's up to you guys.
Well, you're one of the guys.
Well, like I said, I don't have it doesn't matter to me one way or the other, I don't think.
Okay. All righty. Oh, I have one other question. Is anybody that's here also go to the meetings have gone to the meetings in the library for geology or anything like that could give us some suggestions on what helped that work? Does anybody go to the geology ones? Or John, you're shaking your head.
Yeah. Are you talking about the live part or the Zoom part?
The live part. What is it about those meetings? Because they probably have 4 different groups, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. What do they do? What helps those groups get a lot of people, do you think?
They don't have the other evenings all booked.
Oh, they don't.
No, they do not. They're trying to keep, yeah, they may have some other things. They're trying to keep as much flexibility in the library schedule as possible. This Tuesday thing goes back a good decade or more. So.
Okay. All righty, but I think it'd be good for us to think about what we can do to encourage people in Teton Photography Club to come to these meetings that are always going to be on the 3rd Tuesday.
There's better give and take between speakers and audience when it's live. It works okay with Zoom as well. There's a lot. What you might do is there's somebody in the Geologists of Jackson Hole organization that you might speak with, who's ever going to run the Tuesday program to make sure that the live and the Zoom work together, because that's been a bit of a challenge.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, we did a test run the other day, and getting the biggest issue was getting the volume from the Zoom speaker and the volume in the auditorium somewhat to match.
Without getting feedback and all kinds of nasty things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, and yeah, there was just a lot of one person, you know, and even getting the mics in the room to one person, you could hear their mic, and the next person you couldn't, and then the Zoom person was too loud, and then they were too quiet, and yeah,
Fun.
that's going to be a little bit of a challenge. Everything else should, well, knock on wood, seems pretty straightforward, but volume control was definitely an issue.
And those will all be videoed so they can go, peer mentors, other people
Yeah.
in TPC can be able to see it online.
Yes.
Okay. All right, here's the other thing, that we will be staying on Tuesday, back here, our fourth Tuesday, except for one thing, 1 month. We don't typically have a Zoom meeting in December because December is too busy. And if we're the fourth Tuesday in November, that almost always puts us in the week of Thanksgiving. And we found out over the years for a couple times in a row that we hardly had anybody that would come to the meeting. So what I wanted to suggest and get feedback from all of you guys is to move from the fourth Tuesday in November, right before Thanksgiving, to the first Tuesday in December, and that would be our last meeting of the year. Any of you want to share what you think about that?
That seems to make really good sense to move November back and into December and then just have that one meeting. Seems good.
In the past, we used to, although I don't think last year or the year before, we used to have the TPC meeting in December. David, will we have it, or are we going to stick with moving that executive committee or whatever it is into January?
Well, what we've done in the past, December's been more of a, hey, let's just pick a date that seems convenient and then maybe have a get together.
Yeah, like we did at the bowling place that time.
Well, we did bowling. We did the bowling place one time. Last year, we went to the museum for the,
Oh, yeah.
But we are committed with the library to doing these third Tuesdays. So we're going to have to have
Even
some
in
event there.
December.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we're all locked in on that.
Yep.
Okay, well, I'll give you the information, guys, but it sounds like the first Tuesday in December would be good for the peer mentor Zoom meeting. We can talk later on about whether we stick with the Zoom meeting or we go back to having a face-to-face meeting with a Zoom. We'll have to do that later on. I feel like not in 2022. Okay, on to our negative space. Most of you have been here for a long time, but we do have one or two people that are relatively new. So I wanted to quickly go over some of the things about the challenge and then go to something else that's more powerful, I guess. You guys have been really good about getting me your photos by the day before, or I got one today, I think at noon, 10 o'clock in the morning, and that's perfectly fine. Nobody has asked me about, can your photos be taken with a camera? Can they be taken with a phone? What can you use to edit them? All of that's been fine. The photo and the vote of the photos should follow the guidance of the articles in the Peer Mentor Program theme articles. And I think that a lot of you use that because I can always see that in terms of how often the website is used. But we've got a little different situation here that most of you wouldn't be aware of. This is the first time in 3 years that we have had that the person in the previous month decided to go with negative space as the theme challenge. And I did put it in one of the emails that I sent you, but I wanted to explain the why. We had negative space was about 3.5 years ago on a cold January night in a place that didn't have much of a heat, where we had maybe 8 or 10 people that went over negative space and picked out the pictures that were first, second, and third. And Mike Jackson was with us. He used to come. Now he lives in Colorado, I think it is. And he used to come every once in a while to the peer mentor meetings. And after we were all finished with those top 3, which was first, which was second, which was third, Mike stood up, not actually standing up, but ended the meeting with, the picture that won this time wasn't in negative space. And if you look back at the email I sent you, there's a picture taken from an airplane of a boat on, I think it was Jackson Lake, but you could see the island and all that. And at the time, we didn't use the Teton Photography Club website to share monthly themes. And we had a long discussion about it. I mean, it was a very respectful discussion, but we realized that we didn't really have a very good idea about negative space. If we're talking about black and white pictures, okay, that's one thing. If we're talking about wildlife, that would be another. But particularly when the theme was an art theme, it caused problems. And we decided at that meeting that what we should do is share monthly theme articles with everyone. And that's how we ended up with this. So what are the key characteristics that you look for from reading those articles? I think this time we had 6 or 7 articles. I put one in the last week and a half that help you with deciding on your own pictures you took, and also on your vote tonight. How do you decide? Whoops, here we go. How do you decide on what are the essentials or necessary things in voting upon a photo that meets the theme of negative space? This one I got to be real patient with you because this is not an easy one to answer.
I think for me, in reading the articles and going out and taking photographs, one of the things about negative space is that it isn't just there. It's to actually support the positive space, if that makes sense. It has its own distinct function. And yeah, I think there were a couple of photographs I took that were clearly minimalist photographs. And I was also thinking, for what it's worth, it's as though all minimalism photographs are negative space photographs, but not all negative space photographs are minimalism photographs.
Okay. What about the rest of you? What did you look for, and what will your criteria be in terms of what you vote for? I've got to be patient. This is the one, I think, the hardest one we've had to make that decision.
I'll offer, Randy, that for me, it was to have one primary subject with the space around it, not subtracting from that major subject. You don't have multiple things that your eye is drawn to.
Okay. So the negative space doesn't take away from the positive space.
Correct, from the main subject, and there's maybe only one.
Okay.
Maybe even complement the positive.
What do you mean by complement, Ben?
It doesn't draw your attention away from the main subject, but it enhances it.
So the word I'm going to use isn't what you'd necessarily do, but it sort of kind of points an arrow towards the subject.
Not necessarily. It could be the emptiness of it that, that complements whatever the subject is.
Okay, so
If it's-
not a leading line, not necessarily a leading line.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, exactly.
anybody else? Rick, you usually give us some ideas. What do you think? Well, I wait for Rick, I'll tell you, those of you in Jackson, the storm is coming towards you from Teton County.
Yeah.
It's really windy here.
Good winds here.
Rick?
I think the other thing would be composition and how it's composed. That for me was the most difficult part, was once I had my image, getting it composed to accentuate the negative space or the image itself. That was for me the hardest. I had 2 or 3 images that I really wanted to use, but I couldn't quite get them composed the way I thought they would be representing negative space.
I thought with a lot of things about negative space, this would be easy, and it turned out not to be easy at all. Okay, anything else? Okay, here's one of the summaries. I'll give you another summary that are characteristics that are essential. Oops, where is it? Does the positive space draw the viewer's attention, and/or does the negative space interfere and draw attention? That kind of talked about what some of you were talking about. Is the negative space interfering? Second thing, this is a question that I don't know that I have the answer for. I played around with a lot. Should the subject, the positive space, be large, small, in between? And I think this is kind of related to what you were saying, Ben. How do you decide on whether it should be large or small or something in between? Should negative space be in focus, or should it be out of focus? What about color? Is it a contrasting color to the positive space? And this is the one that really hung with me as important, but I found to be very, very difficult. Does the object, the positive space, convey some type of emotion? And a lot of the examples in the articles on the Teton Photography Club website had good examples of that, but my experience being out and about, I didn't find a whole lot of those. And even if I did, I'll give you an example tonight. It didn't turn out very well. So how does the negative space draw the viewer's attention? Does the negative space need to be nothing? So let's look at these characteristics when we're voting. I'm going to give you an example first, and then we'll come back to some other examples. Okay, here's 2 photographs of a very similar space. You probably believe that these 2 photographs are not very good at negative space, but why? What? Maybe you think one of them is good for negative space, but let's discuss the comparison of these 2 and what you think of that. We're not voting on these. Whoops. Dang. What do you think?
To me, they both almost make it, but in the left-hand photo, if the clouds are part of the negative space, they kind of command their own attention. The old abandoned building is too small
Mhm.
in there. But at least it has good empty space around it. And for the one on the right, there's negative space in the foreground, but it's taking up too much of the photograph. It's hard not to keep, at least for me, dropping my gaze to the grass.
Grass
Yeah, I
grabs
mean,
your attention.
yeah, in one of the articles, I thought it said that, and I think this is typical, and people can certainly add in their own opinions on this. Usually when you're looking at an image, your eye's just going to look around it and see
Yeah.
what else is in there. And from what I had read, good negative space, your eye will look at it, but somehow it will wind up taking you back to the positive space. And I'm not sure, it's a tough one on the right. I'm not sure it does that.
Okay, what do the rest of you think about these two, or just one of them, the top one on the right or one on the left?
I think the one on the left has too much interest in the sky for it to be
Yeah.
negative space.
Okay. What about the one on the right, Charlotte?
Well, the clouds, if it were a bald blue sky,
Do the
I don't
clouds take
know.
your attention away from the building?
They do. Yes, in both of them, the clouds just draw my attention.
I
Ben,
think
you look
with
like
the-
you're
Maybe
about
it-
to talk.
Yeah, I think that if you could have the foreground on the right with the image on the left, I think that would give you a more feeling of negative space. The one on the right to me is too cramped.
The building is too big?
I think it's squashed. I think the clouds and the top end of that it's almost off the picture, off the border, detract from it. That's what I'm saying. The composition, if you had as much foreground on the left as you have on the right, I think that would make that a better image.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the one on the left is a picture of clouds that happens to have an old building in the corner.
Okay,
And the one on the right is a picture of a field of grass that has a building in it. And I think the idea is to have a picture of a building. And my eye is drawn to the negative space, not to the subject.
so for you, Sid, what the intention of the photographer was that the negative space is actually keeping your eye on it, whether it's clouds or grass.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the intention was, but that's how I react to it.
My intention was, how do because I really liked the building. There was a big sign that I wasn't supposed to go in the building. And I thought that really, because it's way out in the middle of nowhere. But I realized it was becoming more and more difficult, partly because there was signs that I wasn't supposed to be there and I didn't want to do that. But let me add a third one. Now it's a little different.
Mhm.
Now, what do you think?
It's got great leading lines.
Mhm. It did have great leading lines, but do you want leading lines with negative space? Go ahead, turn on your mic, Charlotte. Why not?
having trouble expressing myself tonight. Negative space needs to be more negative, and leading lines are not negative, I don't think. They have a job to do. They're doing a job.
And they
And-
get your attention.
No, that's true. Yes. Yeah.
See, when I took that picture, I thought, oh, well, that will be good. The only bad thing about it is the clouds. But when I looked at it, I thought, no, it grabs my attention, which is what you don't want the negative space to do. You want it to leave you alone.
So if you had leading lines that led you away or led you to the negative space, is it a leading line? I'm just playing devil's
I would think
advocate
so.
here. I think if you had a bluebird sky, no clouds, or stars, or sunset colors, I think then that would be your negative space, and the lines just would draw you to that.
Okay,
That's a cool old building. Yeah. And I think I'm going to echo Ben to an extent there. If there were no clouds in the sky, your leading lines would take you to the building, and you might come back to those leading lines, but they're going to go right back to that building again.
particularly if the building was a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
I feel like the upper right-hand corner, the building is too big. Ben, what you had said about it being too close to the top, and so, but that would make it more acceptable, I think. Okay, so what hurts the photo as a negative space? For me, it's too much noise in it. I think the grass wouldn't be so bad if the sky in the right-hand corner was simply blue, but that's a problem. Okay, here's some other ways to look at the negative space. What will win your vote? A good negative space or a good positive space? Is anything in the negative space drawing your attention, like with those leading lines on that's wheat? How neutral does negative space need to be? That I think is important, but hard to make a judgment on. Does positive space draw your attention due to emotion or other types of things like that? Does the positive space have an impact? Too big, too small? That was something I found very complicated. So let's review one more set of not so good photos. By the way, I didn't get a whole lot of those. I think people, they've only got 3 or 4 or 5 other than the ones I use of my own. I think it was hard to come up with not so good photos. It was hard to come up with photos. Okay, here's a pair. There's a distinct difference between the negative space in these two. What are the differences? And what would you vote on? If this came down to the last two, which one do you like better? The one on the right or the one on the left? And why the one you like less, what does it have that takes you away?
I like the one on the right better because the one on the left, I'm presuming the green is the negative space and there's too much detail in it. It's a very, if the depth of field were such that those blossoms, those spindly blossoms weren't, were sharp, but the background was, the depth of field was much shallower. It'd work for me possibly.
So if they had been far enough away that you could have blurred the background, it might be better.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just very busy, or chaotic even.
Okay.
In the photo on the right, that bit of land at the bottom kind of detracts from the negative space for me. I mean, it's got an angle and it's a whole different element in the photograph. So I think that if that were not in the photograph, then it would be a better negative space photograph with the thistles as, I guess, being the positive and the sky being the negative. What do you all think?
Hey, Charlotte. I like the one on the right because I think the negative space makes the positive space pop.
Okay.
Whereas I agree with what John said about the left-hand side. There's too much noise and detail in the grass.
And I do agree with Charlotte that if the angle had been slightly different so that you didn't have that ridge line in the background, it's kind of hard to ignore. So you only had the thistles and the clouds. That would be to me, a good negative space photograph. And yeah, the right one, there just isn't enough, I mean, the left one, there isn't enough space between the positive and the negative. So somebody used the term chaotic, and I agree with that. It's messy. It's messy.
The one on the right, if it was in a landscape orientation rather than a portrait, and you had more to the left of the image,
More sky.
Yeah, I think that would enhance the negative space. If that makes any kind of sense?
Does the negative space of those purple flowers there have any meaning for you? Does it raise any emotion?
I want to fix the horizon.
I took that picture. I took a whole bunch of these pictures. It was on, I'm working for my homeowners association to come up with some things about getting rid of weeds. And we had this one lot that had no house that had tons of weeds, but they were on almost a 90-degree drop off, and I'm falling down this, and that's why in the canyon, that's why the trees on the other side are there. I wish I'd taken some more time, but the first time I'd seen one that has a meaning, get rid of those damn flowers or those weeds.
They're invasive.
Oh God. This lot had thousands of these all over the place.
But the horizon line, Randy, doesn't really bother me actually, because the subject is so well defined. Normally I like get twitchy with horizon lines that aren't straight, but I don't really mind the way and I like kind of the way the clouds repeat the angle of the horizon line. And your question was, see how you've got that white band and then you've got the dark clouds. I quite like that. But your question was, does the negative space create any emotion for you? And I think it just adds some drama, but that's not really an emotion.
No. Now, if you had a lot of these in your yard, well, you might eventually have these in your yard, Rachel. You'll find that you cannot get rid of them. They keep coming back. And they're a pain in your hands, in your butt, everything. Okay, let's move along. I think that's it. Oh, here's the other one. Here's the third one. What about this poppy? Does this have a reasonable negative space? Charlotte, go ahead, speak out loud. Got to turn on your speaker though.
That's a negative space around that poppy. It might be a little better negative space photograph if there was even less focus, if the background was even more out of focus and blurred, then I think it would be a little better negative space.
Okay.
But that's the kind of photo that I envisioned when I first started thinking I need to take a negative space photograph. Something like a flower against a real out of
And it has a pretty big positive space. It's not a little tiny thing. It's pretty big, but because of, for me at least, because of the background is blurry, it really stands out. What do the rest of you think?
I like it. I think the positive space is quite simple. I like that stem running down there. I don't think it's oversized for the amount of negative space that's in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a good example of negative space, but in terms of how it works, how the positive space works in a negative space, it just, maybe it's the composition that's irking me, but I feel like it feels like it's been plonked in there or even put in Photoshop and contoured, you know, with a selection tool, and then the background is blurred. It just looks a little bit fake almost because the background's so blurry.
Want me to address that, Randy?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I took that, I think, unless somebody
No,
took
you
the
did.
exact same thing. It was taken with a big lens, so there's a very shallow depth of field. So it's not been photoshopped at all.
Sorry, John, it wasn't a criticism.
No, but you were saying it looked like it was photoshopped, and I just wanted to explain that it hasn't been.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. If you took it with a telephoto and you zoomed in really far, that makes sense. That's why the bokeh is really nice on that lens, though. That looks beautiful.
This brings out a problem I have with negative space photos. How big should the positive space be? I like it in this picture, but would it be better if it was a little smaller? So you have more negative space. That I think that's kind of a personal choice.
You need a better plan. I need a deed. I don't think if it were smaller, that would have made it better. I mean, I realize this is subjective, but I think the size is fine.
I do too.
My first reaction was that the positive space is too big, but looking at it further, I think what I would do is move the positive space down so there was more of the negative space above the flower and less below it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So do you think you've got the characters? I'm going to give you one more that will have an impact on you. One more. Whoops. Maybe I didn't do this. Here's two that I thought people could argue they have a negative space, but I think that most of us would say, no, neither of those are an example of negative space. On the one on the left, the negative space, from my perspective, overpower what you would think of as the positive space at the bottom. And on the one on the right, the clouds, grass, mountain ranges are the negative, but they seem to be positive too. So it really has to be something that stands out, and I think that poppy was a really good example of that.
Yeah, and I agree. Yeah, I agree. The one on the left, I'm left wondering which is supposed to be your subject, the
Right.
clouds, yeah, or the silhouetted mountains. I mean, one of the articles I read said you can have more than one positive space. I'm now looking at the right one. I frankly like that. So you have the grain elevator and the cloud.
And the mountains. And the
Well, there is-
Yeah, but they're far enough away that I don't see them as positive space.
Yeah.
There is
I'm
a
trying to
starkness to the
remember.
one on the right.
Pardon, Ben?
I said there's a feeling of starkness to the one on the right. You know, again, if you've spent any time in wheat country, the grain elevators are usually in lonely places.
Mhm.
And there is a starkness to it. And I think that picture brings that out.
Yeah,
it
it's
really-
evocative. Yeah.
I think it would look really nice in black and white, just saying.
There you go.
That's a good idea. I never even thought about black and white while doing these.
I was trying to remember a quote that negative space was where nothing was happening.
And in
All of
both
these,
of
it's like
these,
there's
something
something
is
happening in the negative space.
These are both really nice landscapes, but I don't think they're good examples of negative space because there's a lot of really nice things going on in each of them
It's too busy.
for
It doesn't
negative
tell you what
space.
to look at.
Well,
That's what I was
for-
saying. Negative space is supposed to be where nothing is happening. There's a lot happening there.
Yeah.
I mean, my eye just moves to the mountains and the clouds and the this and the that.
And your eyes keep moving around.
As opposed to going, there is the subject that's
Right. And for Rachel, who lives on this side now, and the rest of you, these are both on our side of the mountain. The one on the left is Pine Creek Pass, and the one on the right is on the way to Ashton, in middle of many fields. Okay. So on to our negative space. Photos and our voting. This is the least amount we've had in months. There are only 10 photos that were submitted. So instead of 4 votes or 5 votes or whatever else, you now get in the first round 3 votes. Okay, wait a second, yep.
Yeah.
Escape from
put them in
this.
a chat to me.
Yes. Here is, yep. Most of the time you guys need to help me with this one. I think I gotta move this over a little bit. So I don't need that. So you should be able to see all of these, is that correct? All 10 of them?
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
And I can make them actually, dang it. A little bit bigger, whoops, there they go. Okay, here's what I'll do. This is number 1 all the way down to number 10. I'll give them to you one at a time. You need to send your 3 votes to David in the chat room. Is it filling the screen for you guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Here is number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. Number 6. Number 7. Number 8. Number 9. Number 10. Okay, I'm going to show them to you again in a minute, but I wanted to get through all 10 of them so you can start thinking about which ones you get. Pick 3 of them out. Make sure that you send it. Well, now there's only one that has 2 digits in it, but send your 3 with a comma on the chat room to David. Okay, here's number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. Number 6. Number 7. Number 8. Number 9. Number 10. Okay. How are you coming, David?
Okay, you want your top three?
Top three, unless there's a tie.
Well, then 1, 3, and 8.
1,
3, and 8.
and 8. Okay, so 1, 3, and 8. So now what we're going to do is do the others to give them feedback on what you think about each one of these.
I suspect this one wasn't big enough to send to you because it's not very much in focus, doesn't show much detail. Otherwise, it would be a good example in my mind, of negative space.
Yeah, this one actually was Lewis's, and he is in Africa. He sent this to me, and by the time I checked it, yeah, it had, I don't know if I've got where I've got it here, but yes, it doesn't have, it's not very big, and it seems like that, yeah, that's only 24K. But I couldn't say, hey, you gotta send it to me again. But yeah, I think that's the problem with it, is it is rather blurry.
That
If-
certainly has, yeah, it has potential, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I agree with Rick on that. I probably would have voted for that if it was in focus. What I like about it is that it's pretty monochromatic.
Mhm.
There's something about that, I think, that adds to it. And if it had been in focus, and if maybe there'd been a way to kind of saturate the eye a little bit more, I think that would have been great.
I like the light on along the right-hand side of the owl.
Yeah,
That would have helped. That makes it stand out from the background.
it's a little bit backlit, it looks like.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Mhm. He and Candy go out for shooting owls all the time, once a week, I think.
So
Okay. What about this one?
I think this is a good example of negative space. It's just not punchy enough to my thinking. I don't.
It's overexposed.
Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Okay,
well, to me, it's washed out.
that's what I guess I was
The
trying
whole
to say.
picture, or just the negative space, the blue and the kind of beige, or everything?
Everything.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this would have worked great as a black and white. And also, I feel like maybe if it was taken from an angle that made it a bit more dynamic, like, I don't know if it was possible to lie down to shoot sort of up towards the animal a bit more or something, because it just kind of, it's a perfect textbook example of negative space. It's just not really exciting. But I think black and white, first of all, would make it really good. And then, who's that photographer that got kicked out of Grand Teton for feeding foxes? I don't like to cite him because I don't like him, but you know how he gets shots of animals like walking towards the camera. I feel like this could have just benefited from changing the angle a little bit. David
I've got a
Sparrow,
question
is that
then.
his name?
I've got a question about this, and it's not that I have the right answer. I'm just curious. Is the size of the bison in this picture the right size for negative space? Because in my mind, I'm making it bigger and making it smaller, and I think, oh no, this is probably the right size. But what the rest do you think?
I think it's fine.
Pardon?
I think it's about the right size. I think it's a really good example of negative space, but I don't particularly like it. And I've taken, I don't know how many pictures of bison, 1,000, maybe one or two that I took that I like.
Mhm.
They're hard to get really good photos of.
I think
Yeah.
the best
I
photos
feel
of
it.
bison are taken in the wintertime when there's some snow on them.
Sid, I feel the same way. I think the problem that I've come to understand or think about taking bison photos is you got so much contrast between them and the grass or the sagebrush.
Mhm.
It's just impossible to get something that looks very good. Your only shot that makes any sense with the bison is a really close up of the head or something like that, where you get the grass out of the photo.
Or a mommy with the red dog. Those are nice. Okay. This one.
I really enjoy the colors in this, the division of the colors. I think where this one became difficult for me is that I don't really know what the positive space is.
It seems like it would be a good abstract photo.
Yeah, it's beautiful. They're beautiful colors.
Yeah.
Maybe the composition, getting that black edge a little more to the left, picture left. It just seems out of bounds. It just seems awfully centered. And that's right where my eye goes, is right to that black. I'm suspecting this is a flower or a rose petal. But I just think if we could shift it one way or the other.
It's a good example of limited depth of field or but I don't feel like it's negative space.
Yeah, I look at it and I think it's a nice picture, but I don't see any negative space. What you're looking at is the whole picture, the entire image.
Because the quote unquote positive space is not clear. It's not big enough, I don't think, to know that there is a positive space. The negative space becomes what's most interesting for me. The colors are really nice, not super bright, but anything else? Oops. All right. Oh, wait a minute. Uh-oh. I don't think this one is a small one.
Isn't that one of the three?
Oh, there we go. Okay. What do you think, guys?
I really like it. I mean, even if you didn't know that was Sheep Mountain or the Sleeping Indian, it's this stark, dark, positive space with the clouds below it and the clouds above it, different kinds of clouds. But I find that pretty captivating.
I think it's a good example of turning it into black and white.
Yeah. Mhm.
Because if it was not black and white and you saw the sky, would have taken away from it, I think, at least for me.
To me, it's a really nice picture. I really like it, but I don't see it as an illustration of negative space as I understand it. It's not without the clouds in the foreground and in the background. It's a completely different picture. You're looking not just at the mountain, but you're looking at the clouds, particularly the ones in the foreground.
Mhm. So they're not completely negative.
No, certainly not the ones in the foreground.
Yeah. Yeah, because I find myself looking at it in a foggy morning kind of a thing. What about the rest of you?
Well, I agree. It's my photograph, and I kept looking at it and trying to decide what's the positive and what is the mountain the negative, or and I guess I really should have realized that it's not a good example of negative space.
I think it would be if you maybe brought it down, brought the dark down a little bit, so it's almost half and half right now. I think if you had a more, or yeah, I would definitely bring it down and give me some more of the and I mean this in all love and kindness, the more bland whitish gray to the above it. That would accentuate more negative space.
Yeah.
This,
Maybe even not such a close-up of the Indian part of Sheep Mountain.
Mhm.
this is not a comment about negative space, but where did you take that from? I'm a little thrown
Yeah.
by the angle.
I took it from my yard.
That doesn't answer the question for me, Charlotte.
Well, I live out on Spring Gulch Road between the golf course and the airport. And so it's a big, long telephoto shot taken
Oh,
from
okay.
my house on a
But
foggy morning.
were you in fog from your house?
No, the fog was just over the mountain and under the mountain. I mean, the Indian was just peeking through the clouds. Caught my eye, so I ran and grabbed my camera.
For me, this is a good example that challenges my own personal definition of negative space, because I like it, and I do think it's that the mountain stands out, but I guess the fog mountains aren't super negative space because I keep looking at them, particularly in the foreground here, how light they are, that they probably didn't last very long, I wouldn't think.
I agree. I struggle with it, but I didn't have anything else, and so I put it in.
Yeah, I think it's good. What about this one?
I think it definitely has negative space, and the colors are so nice. I kind of wish there was a little motion in the rotor, though. I wish it weren't quite so frozen. What do you all think?
I would agree. I would agree.
That the one in the tail does have some motion, but not the one on the top.
Yeah, it sure does.
That's because they rotate at much different speeds.
Yeah. I would think so.
And I wouldn't know how to get that motion if I were taking this photograph. If I got any motion in the rotor, it would be by accident. Anybody know how you do that?
Lower your shutter speed.
Yeah.
But if you slow it too much, you're going to have to pan with the helicopter and
I really like this one because it's so clearly, there's such a clear distinction between negative space and positive space. I mean, this is actually killing mosquitoes or something like that. And so that what's coming off of the helicopter is a little bit of distraction, but it tells me what's happening. I really like this one.
What I
Yeah,
like about it is the negative space changes from that gray blue in the upper left to kind of a tangerine in the lower right. If
Mhm.
we're all one color, I'm not sure I'd be as attracted to it. I mean, it is good negative space, but that also gives it some added interest, at least for me.
Yeah, I
think that-
agree that I think it's a really good example of negative space, but I actually like the trail of pesticide or whatever it is, Randy, because it
Mhm.
gives context, like the positive space gives context to the negative space,
Right.
because now there's a relationship between the two of them and they work together. It's not, I think if you took away that trail, it would almost look like the helicopter's just floating in space and it'd be weird. Like, I like the way that grounds it in the positive, in the negative space, the fact that it's got that trail.
No, I didn't mean
Trail
that
really
the trail
makes-
was bad for me. I like the trail too. It
the
gives
trail's
me,
great. Yeah, trail's wonderful.
I like it, but I would like it better if there was a lot more space to the left where the helicopter is going. To me, it's going out of the frame, and when something is going in a direction, I like to have a lot more space out in front of where it's going.
I was going to make exactly the same comment. It somehow makes me uncomfortable that it seems to be leaving the frame.
If you had a zoom lens, you could have just zoomed out and had a lot of negative space around it, and more on the left. Good time.
yeah, I think the idea of when something is going someplace, that there's room for it to go there. But I like it because of the smoke or whatever it is that's behind it. That really makes it, because it's so long, it gives it real meaning. So maybe if it was the whole thing was a little smaller with more space on the left, that would have been better. Okay, what about this one?
I think it would have been perfect except for the fence post there in the foreground.
Mm-hmm.
There's too much to look at.
Yeah,
It's busy.
Yeah.
yeah. I'm not sure why they didn't just step 2 or 3 steps to the left and just get rid of that entirely, or just walk in front of it.
Right.
I think by moving in front of it, you'd bring the buildings up just enough larger to compete with the mountains to the right, or to the left, excuse me.
Possibly, but the fence it's just distracting to me. There's no reason it needs to be there.
It doesn't send a message.
It's an interesting angle of Moore Monroe, though. I've never seen it from that angle. It is Moore Monroe, right?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I do like it. I think one of the things I would also suggest is cropping from the bottom. It's another one when we were looking at some of the other examples. There's a little too much there. I mean, to me, my eye kind of has to move through that to get to what I'm assuming is a topic there, which are the buildings.
This is the farm on Mormon Road to the farthest north, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that's not the pink building and it's not the one on the south end. And I've never looked at it from that angle. I've looked at it hiking out to it, but never from that angle before.
Yeah, I like the angle. I think it's really interesting. I
Yeah.
don't know, Tim. I don't hate the fence, you know. I don't know. Since you mention it, I think it is kind of in a weird place, and you know, the left post is cropped, and that's sort of weird. But I didn't really notice it until you mentioned it. I feel like those barns and that fence are one subject. I don't know, in a way.
So Rachel, if I'm just wondering, yeah, because I agree with you. They both kind of tell the story of ranching. I'm just wondering if the fence, particularly that one pole that's coming down.
It's cut off at the top.
Yeah, well, and the one that's coming down from there, if you had a little bit more space between that pole and the right side of the building, so that it didn't look quite as crowded, I'm wondering if that would help on that one. I still like it.
Yeah, I like it too.
This is an interesting photo because well, at least when I think of what I remember from all the articles I read and the pictures that came with them, most of them, the negative space wasn't busy. But this picture, the negative space, different kind of grasses in the front, then you have that line that's a very different kind of hay or whatever it is across from left to right, and you've got the mountains there, and you've got this. And so it's much busier than anything they were defining as what was important. But I agree with you in terms of those the buildings there and the mountains and the grass. It does tell you it's the buildings that's important. What's happening in those houses way back in the day and all that. What do you guys think? Is it important to have minimal things? Or is this fits? This is fine.
One of the articles said that negative space didn't have to be empty space. You know,
Yeah. Well, and I'm just wondering, I'm holding up a piece of paper, if you cropped it vertically, and actually if you had moved slightly to the west, as I said, so that the post wasn't quite crowding it as much, or that pole that comes down at an angle. And so you took out the Teton range and got the other mountains way in the background, so they weren't as prominent. I think that'd be a great photo, frankly.
So my comment is, I think you could crop this picture in 3 or 4 different ways.
Yeah.
And that tells me that the negative space is not empty. There's a lot of things going on.
We'll have to
Good
remember
photo.
that the next time somebody picks it. Because I like the idea too. Because
I could take the
barns
bottom
here-
off, I could take the right off, there's so many ways to crop. It's like several pictures in one.
Mhm. This is Gigi, so we're not giving her the feedback for it, so that doesn't help her. Let's look at this. Whoops. Let's look at this one.
That's just elegant to me. I'm assuming this was developed as high key. There's no-
Shot as high key.
I'm just wondering, either shot or developed that way.
Sue, I took it and I don't know how to do that, so that's not what happened.
Oh, so how did you get no background in that? That's just gorgeous.
So there was, it was a color shot, and the background when I converted to black and white was just this fairly light gray color, which was
Okay.
not contributing to anything. So I just did the subject select tool in, well, I don't use Lightroom, but it's the same in Camera Raw. And then I just adjusted the mask where it hadn't picked it up properly and just moved the sliders until I got the light background.
That's elegant to me.
When I think of my own definition of negative space photo, this fits it perfectly.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I wouldn't want the picture just to have that hawk. Is it a hawk?
I think it's a Swainson's, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. But if it was just the hawk, it's not the same. I like that dead branch. Well, not just the branch, the tree to the left. You can see all the lines in it, and it makes it, for me, it makes it real.
Yeah, I also like the balance in that one,
Mhm.
you know, right to left and top to bottom.
Yeah.
Anything else? Rachel, I like having you here. I like that.
Oh, just so you guys know, I took it on the way home from Brooks Lake. It's probably the best shot I got.
Really? I think it's nice.
All right.
Okay, wait a second. Okay, now every person has just one vote. Okay, is that, like, let me see, that's, now those shows the complete one. Are those it? Is that it? Yeah. Okay. Ready? This is number, yeah, notice this is new numbers now. This is going to be, this was number one. It's also going to be number one, but the next one is number two. And this is number one. This is number two. And this is number three. If you'd like me to show those three again in big, let me know and I'll be glad to go through it again.
Everybody through voting?
How many votes have been cast, David?
Looks like 11.
Okay, David.
All right. Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Third place is number 3.
Okay,
Second place is number 1. And first place is number 2.
number 2. And first place is the Swan.
Number 2, yes.
Yep, okay, so that's 1. This is 2. This is 3. Okay, let's start with 3rd place here. What did you like about this?
Composition, where the harvester is at, sort of coming at you, but across and along those leading lines.
Okay,
It's very uncluttered, both compositionally and in terms of colors, which I think also helps emphasize the positive space as opposed to the negative space.
okay.
It's the correct color of a combine.
It's a new one. Probably costs $150,000 or something.
That
Maybe
it
more than
costs
that.
more than that.
Yeah, you Texans know how much that costs.
Well, if you've been a wheat farmer, but it's the correct color.
John Deere.
Photograph tells a story.
No, it's a nice image.
I like the image a lot, but it doesn't fit my personal definition of negative space.
Why is
You're
that?
Looking at an image of the combine in a field, and you can't take one away or the other away without creating a completely different image.
There's so much texture in the wheat or barley, and it changes, and there's so much interest in that I don't feel that it's negative space.
In the foreground, or what he's
In
eating
the
up?
foreground, the middle ground, the background, there's all that change in texture in the grain. And I find that very interesting. And so
What if you converted that to a black and white, what everybody, I mean, I totally understand what Charlotte's saying, but yeah, this is the tough thing about negative space.
Then you'd lose that contrast in the colors, which I like.
Yeah, but if we're talking about negative space, you want a subject and the rest of everything else is supposed to be not a subject. And what I hear Charlotte saying is the wheat's the subject.
well, it's very interesting because there are so many different textures. And I think if you changed it to black and white, you'd see those textures even more perhaps. So I think that this really is it's a great photograph. I love it, but I don't think of it as negative space.
Oh, really?
I do.
I
Yeah.
agree. I think it is too.
I learned a lot about wheat and farming standing here taking pictures of these things going back and forth, because the trucks that pick all the wheat up, the guys would stop and talk with me about it. What I liked about it was this one had it looks like steam, but it's not really steam, it's the dust.
Chaff dust.
Yeah.
So when did Gleaner go to green?
Oh, I don't know.
Is that directed at me?
Yes.
Gleaners are gleaners. John Deere
Yeah.
makes great equipment.
John Deere green.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed taking pictures of the farmers going to work on this. I thought it was kind of classic negative space, because I was looking for something that says something. And maybe because I was there and talked to these people I was there taking pictures at this place for half an hour, 45 minutes.
So Randy, was this in the afternoon?
Early afternoon. Yeah, probably.
I maybe go back at the golden hour.
And actually, I found out so much, so much information about them. They start at 8 o'clock in the morning and
Yeah.
don't finish until midnight.
Right.
And
Well, and there's a caveat on that. They will harvest as long as it passes a
Moisture.
test, a moisture test.
so if it's low humidity, they'll do it 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I mean, but
If
if
they
it starts, if the moisture starts rising and the weed doesn't pass the test, they'll stop.
Yeah, no, that would, yeah, you really wouldn't want to waste it. Okay, enough. I sent the message to you. You could learn a lot from farmers. I learned a lot from farmers for doing that.
Yeah, they're
Okay, here we
outstanding in
go.
their field.
Randy, is the harvest over now?
I think for wheat, it is pretty much over, but then there's other things over here on our side. There's potatoes and there's 2 other things. My wife knows all this kind of stuff. I guess
Winter
clean
wheat
up
is
horse
done.
poops.
Winter wheat is done. Though spring wheat will still be harvested, and there's still barley to be harvested.
Yeah, barley.
Wow.
There's plenty of barley to be harvested. Yeah. Okay, here's number 2. Very different from number 3.
To me, that's almost magical with that partial moon in there. Definitely negative space. And I kind of like, as you're looking at it, the different shades of blue going up.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sue. I think you could take some off the top though.
Yeah,
There's kind of a whole lot of negative space. I think you could still have the same negative space effect by taking a quarter or a third off of that top and still get all those colors in there.
Yeah, because the top, almost the whole half of the top is that pretty much the same blue. Maybe a third of the top.
And I was thinking you could almost take something off the bottom.
What did you say, David?
I was thinking you could take something off the bottom.
I think the bottom is, I like that you have a little bit in the middle. I think you don't want to make that too small.
If you cropped the bottom, you might get to the point where it would get up to that V and the sky would touch the bottom of the photograph. And I don't think that would be good.
I agree.
Yeah, but that's to me, the mountains are the other is the subject. It's like there's 2 things.
No, that's true. Well, there are kind of 3 things. There's the mountains, the moon, and the sky, but it's very effective as a photograph.
Beautiful photograph.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Just beautiful.
The edge of the mountains are so sharp that really makes a big difference for me, that you could see the tiny little changes that in real life are huge.
yeah, I agree that, I mean, that struck me as well. The definition there. And again, I thought I read in one of those articles that maybe I'm hallucinating, that you could have more than one object in positive space.
I remember that too.
Yeah,
This is a
That's what
very good example of it, since you have a big positive space and a little positive space and a big negative space, even though the negative space does change color somewhat.
yeah, because the flip of this is that would not be the same image without that sliver of a moon in it.
Yeah, I agree.
Whose photograph is this?
It's mine. Ben.
Ben, all right. Great, Ben.
It's actually it's colored, so I know that's kind of surprising.
Yeah.
And Ben sent 2 pictures. The other one I didn't put in but he said this could be a not very good. The moon is tiny. And I think, Ben, I don't know if I responded to you with this one.
Yeah.
This moon being this big is so much better than the other
Oh,
one
yeah.
where you had to look
Well,
for the moon.
The hard part about this whole shoot, and this span, the time lapse or the time I took this is from where the moon is. This is one of the first pictures to where it drops down behind the mountains. So it was a very target-rich environment, but just finding the right crop and finding the right size moon, and then getting the mountains, cropped correctly. Actually, Mount Moran is to your photo right, and this is Cascade Canyon, more towards the middle. It was just hard, I got a ton of photos, and I'll post them tomorrow when the rest of them. It was really a fun night. Different lenses, different exposures.
So the Grand is actually off the picture to the left?
Yeah, the Grand is way left.
Yeah.
Mount Moran is actually probably, as I'm looking at my screen, where would be right under where Randy is now on my screen. Photo right. Maybe almost, yeah, move your cursor, Randy. All right, about there, yeah.
Oh,
Would be
here?
Moran, yeah, right in that area.
Here.
Where you would see you see the upslope of Moran.
Oh, I get it.
Okay. All right. Third, number 1.
I like the texture in the negative space.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
lighting is gorgeous in this photograph. That is beautifully exposed.
Composition is very
Reflection is
nice.
important. Reflection sets off the lines in the water.
And it's still a color photograph, isn't it? But it could be done as a black and white.
I'm not sure if it's a black and white or if a color.
It's a black and white. It's a black and white.
Is it yours, Sue?
Yeah.
Oh, it's black. I guess my mind is just saying blue water.
Well, yeah, and it was, but there was a little bit of distraction in the upper area. And in order to get that, that's why I vignetted it heavily on the top, kind of pushes your eye down.
Yep.
Yep.
And then took out the color on it.
I think if it was in color, there would be different areas of the water.
Yep.
And I think it being the same gray with a little bit of darkener up at the top is a whole lot better. I think a black and white is a better way to go about this than a color photo would be.
The composition off center with the swan looking back to the right is just right.
Thank you.
And all that negative space over there on the right, like the assignment was for.
Yeah, I found it very difficult to decide how big the positive space object should be related to the negative space object. But this one is a really good example of it. It's not too small, it's not too big, just right. And I forget who it is, it said it, that the swan is looking back to the right, adds something to it. That's where she wants to go. Anything else?
Just a stunning photo.
And the reason you like it so much, Ben, is because it's black and white?
Well, it comes in second.
All righty. I've got to change something here. New share here. We got to go down. Oh, we can't, I don't want to take a long time on this. But what did you learn from what we've gone through?
It's not as easy as it looks.
I think anytime you're out taking pictures, you realize that.
Yeah, but I think for me, negative space was deceptively complicated. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, you know, at first it's just going out, okay, you've got a topic and then negative space, but balance counts, size counts.
Hopping.
Yeah, a lot of things count in there.
One of the things that I learned from this is look for things that are annoying, that you don't need in the picture. I mean, you don't actually have to go to just one positive space and everything else has to be negative, but take out the negative thing, take out the annoying things in negative space so that it's really easy to know what to look for. It doesn't have to be just one and blank, but I think that was helpful to me in terms of what I see. Look around the edges, take that stuff away. Anything else important to you guys?
It seemed just as difficult as the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I think we had something to talk about on this one that we didn't have on the first one. Ben, were you at the first one? Trying to think of who was there. Tim, but not the Tim that's here tonight. The other Tim had the first place. I'm trying to think of what were the other. I can't think of what the other ones were. Okay, Sue, your choice again. Did that sound nasty? I'm sorry. Sue, it's your choice again.
Can I?
Can you
Can I
pick
give
it
you my
tomorrow
choice?
and get it to me?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
Do you have the picture of this?
Hold on. I'm going to do a snip here. And, you know, if anybody has one, they just have a burning desire for us to do, feel free to email me.
While you're looking at this, one of the things I rearranged these as, almost a year ago, was these monthly composition themes, these 10 on the left-hand side, versus all the others. And I think all of them are good, but I think that the ones that are the composition themes, those 10, really are more challenging. And I'm not suggesting that you pick that again, but this time it made sense to me why those were so negative that I really did need to read the articles, because there's something like weather. Yeah, that you can do that with your head, but there's some things that are a little bit more difficult than that.
Okay, actually, I will take that as advice.
Other people may not like you because you do that. Okay. Anything else? David, got anything else to let us know about what's happening in Teton Photography Club?
No.
We're all done? Okay. Well, thank you all for being here. Appreciate everybody's vote. And we'll see you September 27th, and I'll probably be sending something out, probably not tomorrow morning, because I'm going on a hike with someone tomorrow morning early, but I should have it out for the Facebook by the afternoon. All righty. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Randy.
Have a good summer. Bye-bye.